Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom. Today, let's talk about how you can collaborate to build your business even faster and make a greater impact. So I have brought on Danielle Wiebe. She's a community builder, collaboration expert, business strategist, and the founder of the Business Babes Collective, a global community for female entrepreneurs. And we dive all into collaboration, how you can get started with it, how to build your network and create those strategic relationships. So I love this episode. Make sure you share this with a friend and we'll dive in. Hey, Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rachel. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you. So let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Danielle Wiebe, and I am the founder of a global community of entrepreneurs called Business Babes Collective. And we actually started, it's almost been 8 years now. And it started with this kind of idea of building community and hosting these pop-up events. And the reason for that was because when I started as an entrepreneur, I really was looking for a community to be a part of. I was looking to, go to these events because I knew that I needed to surround myself with other like-minded entrepreneurs in order to, build my network. I knew that, it was important to network as a business owner. And I always felt a little out of place. So I would go to these events. I was usually one of the only women in the room at the time, usually one of the youngest in the room. And so I felt like I had to kind of be someone else. I couldn't really just be my authentic self, or I felt like I couldn't really ask questions or be vulnerable. And so for me, I wanted to create a space where women could come and just feel supported and feel like they belong there. And so that started with just hosting these pop-up events. It honestly started as a small idea that I had no idea would become a business. It was like, I want this for myself, so I'm going to just host this event. The first event we had like 10 people in the room, wasn't anything special. And it just really snowballed and grew from there. So the first event that we hosted, I had people coming up to me saying like, okay, well, when's your next one? Like, how do we get involved? And I'm like, I don't know. I will figure that out. So it's really kind of been this evolution over the past 8 years of really building this community and then pivoting and changing depending on, the needs of our community, of my clients, and then also, of course, changes in the world as well. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Of course, there's a lot more to it, but
Yeah. So how big have these events gotten?
Yeah, so we started, like I said, very small in my local city of Vancouver, where I live, Vancouver, Canada. And then we started expanding. So we started doing larger scale events. So around 200, some of our biggest events have had 300 people at them. And we also expanded to other cities. So we started getting inquiries from people who, would come to our events, either visiting or they're originally from Vancouver and then they moved somewhere else and they said, man, I want a community like you guys have there now in my local city. And so we actually started expanding and we had chapter leaders. And so we expanded to 5 cities across North America. And we were hosting events in all of those different cities. And then of course, when 2020 happened, we had a huge pivot that we had to do. But up until then, it was hosting pretty much monthly events in all of these cities every single month in 5 cities.
Wow. So how were you charging people to attend the events? How are you monetizing? What did that look like?
Yeah, great question. So at the beginning, because I did not see this as a business of its own, I more saw it as a networking opportunity. I was really just looking to cover my costs. Mm-hmm. And so when I started, it was really, okay, how much do I need to charge? How many people do I have to be in the room? I would do a quick math and okay, that's what I need to charge for tickets in order to grow. And so it started with $10 tickets. And then, yeah, absolutely. We started to actually figure out, okay, first of all, how can we monetize these events? How can we make them more profitable? And how can we create these strategic collaborations with other business owners, with other brands to bring them on board as sponsors, as vendors, We had speakers, of course, all of these different things to actually make the event not only more profitable, but more valuable for the people in the room. And so as that happened, of course, our ticket prices went up and we were able to monetize that way. Another thing that I realized is that pricing really attracts, like, you need to figure out who you want to attract, right? And so when we had like the $10 tickets, it was people that weren't necessarily super invested in their business. It was sort of like, oh, this sounds like a fun event to come to, which was totally fine to get started. But really, the people that I realized later on that I wanted to attract were people who are really serious and willing to invest in their business. And so that's really a mindset shift that I had to have of, this is not just, so that we can earn that income, even though of course that's important, the monetization part, but also, when I attend an event or when I invest in something in my own business, I want to know that the other people in the room have also invested in themselves. And so that part was really important to kind of like create that community. And that came through, the kind of process of growing our community and pivoting in that way.
Cool. So I know one of the big things that you do is, collaborations and partnerships for you to grow your business. I want to talk about that. Why don't you share what you do and what that's looked like?
Absolutely. So it's funny because I've always had this, I guess, mindset of collaboration since the beginning. It was like, okay, I know that I can't do this business just by myself. I need to bring other people on board. I need to collaborate with other entrepreneurs, other businesses, so that we can all kind of grow together. And so this is kind of in some ways come naturally to me, but also in other ways has been really scary because when I was first getting started, I would reach out to people, usually through Instagram. Back then, it was like I would like DM people who I was really inspired by. And I'd say like, hey, you're really inspiring. I know you're from Vancouver and, we have this little community here, which, we had nothing at that point. We didn't have a following, we didn't have anything, but I had this big vision of like what we wanted to create at that point. And so I said like, hey, can I buy you coffee? I'll just take like half an hour of your time. I just want to buy you coffee. I want to get to know you, know your story, and just kind of see if there's a way that I can support you, our community can support you, and kind of go from there. And so that's really how it started, was like going for coffee with people, sharing my vision, also learning more about them and like, hey, what are they looking to do? Where do they want to go? And a lot of these people, even though they had been quite successful, they weren't really getting opportunities to speak in front of a room or be on a panel or be involved in events because there wasn't much going on in our local city at that time for young women entrepreneurs. And so that was really a light bulb moment for me of, okay, even though I don't have this huge following, I don't have this like huge community yet, I can provide something for them that they really want, which is exposure, opportunity, that sort of thing. And so that's where it started. And then of course, there's so many different ways that you can collaborate. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that because this was just for like the events and finding speakers and panelists and all that. Then it was like, okay, how can we bring in other businesses to potentially sponsor events, whether that be to like collaboratively partner. So maybe someone is a catering sponsor and they're gonna come on board and we're gonna collaborate in that way. We're gonna promote them in exchange for them providing value to us. And then there's also paid partnerships that we would do for these events. We'd have brands come on board to sponsor the event financially so that we could then be able to cover our costs and be profitable as an event. And in exchange, they would get access to our community. And so there was a lot of different ways in the event space that we collaborated. That being said, of course, when we started to pivot more online, I realized, wow, there are endless opportunities online to collaborate. This right here, podcasting, is collaboration, which I love. It's such a cool way to be able to collaborate and work with other people as well. And that you can collaborate on social media, you can do email list swaps. Like there's just endless things that you can do, hosting co-events with people, whether it be virtual or in person. So it's really just opened up, now that we're more in this online space, it's really opened up these opportunities to continue to collaborate and continue to create these partnerships that are mutually beneficial, that everyone wins. And it's a great way to grow your business and to get more exposure, and then also help other people. And you never know where those relationships can lead. And that's what I love about, creating community and creating these collaborations.
Yeah. So where do you find people that you can collaborate with?
Great question. I would say, depending on your industry, looking for places that they're already hanging out. So a lot of times that is maybe in-person events or virtual events. A lot of people that we find virtually to collaborate with are people we find through other people. That makes sense. So if I already have a connection with someone and they're maybe working with them, I'm like, oh, that person looks really cool. Like, let's see what they're all about. Or I hear about something from someone else. And so usually it's like through a mutual connection. And what I always say is figure out, who is in your industry, who has aligned audiences. So what that means is, if you are trying to reach, let's say you're trying to reach moms, right? You want to find other people that are also in that industry who have similar ideal clients. And the mindset that I always have is a mindset of abundance. I think that we kind of sometimes think, oh, this person is doing something kind of similar, like we're in competition. And the way that I look at it is that there is enough business for all of us. And so looking at people as collaborative partners instead of competition is a really, really great way that you can actually expand your mind, but then also create these partnerships that can be really, really successful for you both. Now, I will say, before you collaborate with someone, make sure that you actually like them, that you share values, right? And you share kind of mindsets and that sort of thing, because your reputation is going to rub off on them and vice versa. And so make sure, if you are going to pitch a collaboration, do your research. That's what I always say. Like, spend the time and do your research, because it's going to be so well worth it in the long run.
Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way.
Exactly. I think we all have. And that's the thing. I've made so many mistakes in this area. Like, I cannot even count how many collaborations have gone wrong, like for me. And it's funny because, you'd think that with all the failures that I've had in this area, you'd think, oh, well, why wouldn't you just stop doing collaborations? It's like, well, because every single one, I learned something new. And of course, a lot of those things happened in the early stages of my business, where I just wanted to work with everyone. I wanted to collaborate with everyone. I had zero boundaries in place. That's another thing that's really important, having those boundaries. And so I just let people walk all over me and take advantage of me, right? And so I think it's important to learn those lessons, and you can learn those lessons from other people's failures, hopefully. Sometimes you also just have to learn the hard way, unfortunately. But I still believe so much in the power of collaborations, that it's one of the biggest strategies really that we use to grow our business.
Yeah. So let's say you find someone you want to collaborate with. Where do you reach out to them, and what would you say?
Such a great question. Okay. So if you find someone you want to collaborate with, first of all, see how you can support them first. So make sure, are you following them on any kind of social platforms that they're on? How can you kind of make that connection first? And again, do your research before you ever reach out. Because if you're just like, hey, this person looks like a good person to collaborate with, I'm just going to reach out and just ask for what I want, right? And that's usually how people do it, because they're going for a number, because they've heard like success is a numbers game. So they're like, I'm going to ask 100 people if I can collaborate with them. I would recommend, instead of doing that, make a list of people, your ideal people that would love to work with, love to collaborate with, and then spend the time to research those people, research their communities, research their podcast, YouTube, Instagram page, website, whatever it is, to first of all, see if it's even a good fit. And then second of all, to actually have something to talk about when you reach out. Because if you're just reaching out and it's all about you, it's probably not going to be a successful pitch. So start with, how can you support them? Can you review their podcast, right? Like podcasts, we all want reviews. So, if you're listening to this and you haven't left Rachel a review yet on her podcast, you've been listening, leave her a review, because it's a really great way to support someone. And just like little things like that. Are you subscribed to their YouTube? Have you commented on their social media? Like that sort of thing. And then when you reach out, start with something to do with them specifically. So, hey, I was listening to your podcast, or I saw what you posted on social media that so resonated with me because XYZ. So be personal and be specific and compliment them first before you ever ask for something in return. So you start with that. And then you say like, hey, this is a little bit about me. This is how I would love to collaborate with you. Think about what's in it for them. So like, what are you giving to them, right? Because you can't just ask for something, but not really have like a benefit. So what is in it for them? If you are just strictly asking to speak at an event that they're hosting or be a part of something that they're doing, how can you support them? So can you share whatever they're doing? For example, if you want to speak at an event someone's doing, say like, hey, I'd love to speak at your event. These are the things that I could speak on. I'd also love to share this event with my community. That is going to be so much more of a value add for them than just, hey, I want to get in front of your audience.
Right.
Right. So really think about what value you can add. And if it's not something specific, say you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't have a community or I don't have anything. There's other things you have of value. So do you have any skills, right? Everyone has skills. Everyone has something that they can offer. Could you offer them, I don't know, like a free session or strategy session on whatever it is that you do? Or could you offer them some free product and send it to them if you have a product-based business? Like there's so many ways that we can add value. You just gotta be creative, right?
Yep.
And so that's what I would say is make sure, first of all, it's about them first, support them before you ever reach out. Share with them specifically what you want to collaborate with, because if you just send them a message saying, hey, do you want to collab? No one knows what that means.
No idea.
I collaborate.
What does that mean?
No idea what it means when people say, do you want to collaborate? I'm like, maybe, but maybe not. I have no idea what you're asking me. So be specific. When you do want to work with someone, and specifically ask for what you're wanting. Don't beat around the bush and, butter them up, but then they reply. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, but I really want to like be involved in this, or I really want to, collaborate with you on this. Don't like bait them and switch them. Be upfront with what you're asking for within that pitch as well.
Got it. What if there's no response?
Good question. So follow-up is super important. And it's so funny because like I'm always telling people like follow-up is so important, follow-up is so important. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, shoot, when like I remember pitching that person and I actually never followed up with them. So we all dropped the ball on this one. But what I would recommend is have a system in place. So we use a project management system, just Asana. I'm sure, other people have different ones that they use. I don't know, Rachel, you probably have one that you love.
We use Asana too.
Amazing. So Asana is great. So put it in your Asana board or wherever you're doing your, project management. If you don't have one, highly recommend using something because it's really important to keep yourself organized. But if you do pitch someone, put their name, their email, all that kind of stuff in your Asana board, link the email that you sent, and then schedule it for a couple weeks from when you sent that email to loop back around and follow up with them. And sometimes we have to get creative with follow-up. So if they're not responding to an email, then, you can, again, making sure that you're already following them on social media, but maybe you're just kind of supporting them on social media. I know so many times people have sent me an email and I've forgotten to reply, and then they'll comment something on my Instagram, or I'll see them pop up somewhere else. I'm like, oh, they sent me an email. So then I go in my inbox and I like type their name in. I'm like, I'm so sorry for not responding. It'll like jog something in my memory, because I'm notorious for opening up emails and then forgetting to reply, but thinking I replied in my head. So that's something that's super important, is like, how can you be in their world and continue to support them until either, and sometimes you'll get a no response, like as in you won't get a response.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you'll get a flat out no, right? The thing is, a no is not a bad thing, because at least okay, that's a closed door for now. It's not always a closed door forever, but that's a closed door for now. I can move on from that. And maybe in the future, I can reach out to them again for a different type of opportunity to collaborate. Maybe that wasn't the right time. Maybe it wasn't the right opportunity. Maybe it just wasn't a fit at that moment. That doesn't mean that you can't pitch again. It just means that maybe you have to be a little bit creative. So that's where you kind of like have to come up with some creative strategies. And I know for me, like, for example, we pitch a lot for like speakers for our events, for example, and things like that. And some speakers that we've had at our events, it literally took us like 5 years to get them, because we just kept in touch with them. And it was always kind of like, no, it doesn't work right now. No, it's not the right timing. But it was never like no, I'm not interested. It was more so like kind of left the door open. And that's where you kind of have to get smart and know, is this a closed door forever, or is this an open door for a possibility in the future? And so a lot of those opportunities and a lot of the collaborations that we've done that have been actually some of our most successful collaborations have taken us years to get. And so be patient too.
Yeah. No, that's super good advice. What's one of the best books you've read?
Oh my goodness, that's a really hard question. So many good books out there. I would say one that really changed my mindset and perspective has been, and I've read it a couple of times over, is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Did you read my mind? I was just thinking of what's one of the books that has impacted me the most. I'm like, that one.
That is
true.
So there's something connected here. That's hilarious. I love that book because I actually read it really, really early on in my entrepreneurial journey. And I think I already had that like grit kind of about me of like, I'm not giving up, but it just sort of reiterated what I already think I knew deep down, but it was encouragement. Like whenever I felt like, I want to give up, this is so hard. It was like, no, it's the small little decisions that you're making. So for anyone who hasn't read it, it's a great book. Obviously, if both Rachel and I are like thinking that's the book, but it's a small little incremental decisions that actually make the big impacts. It's not like the big massive wins that you think about.
Right.
And so for me, that has been the story of my business. It's like small, little, tiny daily actions that I've taken that have resulted in what we've been able to create. And we've never given up. So
yeah.
we're still here.
Yeah. The book is awesome because it's like you don't see the fruits of your labor right away, even like a year later, 2 years later. Like, but I look back 12 years later and I'm like, holy crap. Like, so like it takes time, but if you're patient and consistent and just like continue to do the small, seemingly insignificant things that he talks about, like you'll look back and say, whoa, look what has happened.
Yeah. And I think that actually, I'm glad you brought that up because it also loops back to, I think people expect that a lot of the things that they're doing, especially when it comes to, collaborating with other people, or maybe, you're growing your audience, whatever that is. And you actually won't see the result of what you're doing now until probably minimum 6 months, but probably not even then, probably a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Like, for example, let's say you are, and I don't know, is your community like, do some of them have podcasts or like YouTube channels, that sort of
Yep.
thing, like content creators? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of the things that you're doing right now and like the consistency that you're like, okay, I'm being consistent, but not seeing any results here. Like, where are my results? It's like, you're probably not going to see it within that year. Like, you're probably going to see it 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, as long as you don't quit. So that's the important part. Don't quit on yourself.
Such good advice. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
I really love this question too. You have such great questions. So impact for me, of course, there's an impact that you make with your business if you're serving the world and, serving your clients and customers and community. But beyond that too, I really have a huge importance of giving back to people that are less fortunate. So one of the organizations that we've worked with quite a bit is organization called Ally Global Foundation, and it is incredible. My husband and I traveled to Nepal a couple of years ago, and they work on the prevention side, but also the aftercare of children who've been rescued from human trafficking. And that experience of, being there and being in one of the homes, it was life-changing. Like, it would just open my eyes to a lot of things that, happen, but it was just so real for me. And so that is super important to me. And I think, giving hope to people who have no hope. And I think it's really cool too. And that's why I love that you asked this question. I think it's really important too, as entrepreneurs. Of course, we have a mission to like serve our clients and our community, but if we can figure out a mission behind the mission too, I think that really, really helps on days that are really hard, because you can think like, okay, this is not just for me. This is not just for my clients. Like, this is for the greater good. And whatever organizations that are really like you're really passionate about or really speak to you, think about that. Like, if you can make a greater impact with your business, and if you can generate more revenue, all of those things, like, you can give back even more than you are now. And I think that's really powerful. So thanks for asking that question. And I love that your community is focused on that.
Yeah. Where can we connect with you?
You can connect with me on Instagram. My personal page is Danny Living Life with an I, Danny Living Life. And then our business page is Business Babes Co. And our website is businessbabescollective.com. And if you go on there, you can grab a free workshop that we have there. And it's all kind of diving deep into collaborations.
Cool. Danielle, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Rachel. I really appreciate it.